Are you ready, Mr. Faisal? Oh, Mr. Faisal, are you ready?
Hi, yeah, I'm ready. I'm here.
All right, okay.
Hello, hi. Have we started the session? Hi, so I'd like to welcome everybody to this session on designing and evaluating policies using behavioral insights. You would have just seen me, I think, speaking with Dr. Pele Hansen about various different things around behavioral insights. And I think one of the things that you probably would have seen here is that behavioral insights is a very live topic, a very live issue being used in public policy. And previously, and this was the point that was being made in the keynote, is that previously it was seen as something that was maybe used in relation to making some adjustments and tweaks to implementation. So to try and use it in relation to simply improving the way that an existing policy does, as opposed to the paradigm shift that was being described in the keynote, which is around changing the broader approach of how to do policymaking, which is one of those topics that we hope we're going to be able to tackle and to be able to discuss in this particular session that we're going to have here. You've already heard me speak, I assume, so I'm not going to speak as much. But what I am going to do is I'm going to start by asking my fellow speakers and panelists in this session to just quickly introduce themselves and to say hello to everybody as well. So if I can ask you both to also just introduce yourselves.
Okay. Assalamualaikum, Mr. Faisal.
Walaikum salam.
I'm Sufyan from the Private Education Division, Ministry of Education. Okay, I'm currently the head of unit for policy and governance in this division. So most likely we are actually overlooking at the operational of the private education institution in Malaysia.
Excellent. Very welcome, Mr. Sufyan.
Thank you.
Okay, hello, hi, Mr. Faizal Naru. I'm Muhammad Nazir Abdul Rahman, as a Deputy Dean in Faculty of Education, University Malaya. I'm as a lecturer here, teaching psychology, educational psychology and counseling.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Professor Nazir. Very nice to have you with us
Thank
as well.
you.
So for those people who are joining us in this session now, what we're going to do is we're going to have two presentations, one from Mr. Sufyan and then one from Professor Nazir. And then afterwards, we're going to have a bit of a discussion, and we will have question and answers coming from you in the audience. So if you could put your questions into the chat, the team at MPC will be looking at those and monitoring those, and we'll be trying to group some of those things together so that then we can have a bit of a discussion at the end of those presentations. But like I said, this session here is to start to have a look at how behavioral insights can be used more in the design and evaluation of policies. And we'll be looking in particular at education policy here with our two esteemed speakers. So perhaps, Mr. Sufyan, I can give the floor to you to speak for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then same to you, Professor Nazari, sorry. And then we can have our discussion afterwards. So the floor is yours, Mr. Sufyan.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Faisal. Okay, for the very beginning, let me introduce my organization. Okay, just like my simple introduction previously. Okay, I'm from the Private Education Division. So, Private Education Division is actually one of the division in the Ministry of Education Malaysia. So, we are responsible towards the operational of private education institution. The private educational institution is regulated by the Education Act 1996, or known as Act 550. So overall, there are actually three different categories of private educational institution under the Act, which can be categorized as kindergarten, schools, and centers. Okay, so for kindergarten, they are provided preschool education from kids for from 6 years old, and then for schools, we actually have 9 categories altogether. But then they are offering formal education from primary, secondary to post-secondary. And the last part is actually the centers, which actually offer short courses to support the formal education. So why I introduced these education categories, private education categories, is because the private educational institution is actually also under the purview of the Ministry of Education Malaysia. So as of 2022, there are more than 15,000. As you can see in the slide, there are 15,080 educational institution, private education institution registered with the Ministry of Education. And these centers, these educational institutions serve more than 600,000 students. So even though it's actually quite small compared to the government education service institution that covers more than 5 million students, is only for our private education institution is only covering less than 12% of the total population of schooling year students. However, the existence of the private educational institution are very important. And then when we say that very important, we need to make sure that these institutions are well regulated, well inspected by the government to make sure the services are as good as what they should be provided based on our Education Act. So even though we have more than 15,000 educational institutions that is registered with the Ministry of Education, we still have many education institutions which is operating without registration. So these are actually the main issue that we're facing years through years. Okay, um, we do identify that some of them are very bluntly operating, promoting their institution without any proper registration. And then some parents or some kids who already attended to their education institution may get not the right quality of education. So we at the Ministry of Education have taken legal action to this unregistered institution, but somehow it doesn't resolve the mushrooming of unregistered institutions. So this is actually the kind of situation where we have faced through years. So wanted to know how can we actually change the operation, the operators to actually come and register with the Ministry of Education. So we believe there are various factors that contributing to this matter, meaning that why they just can start operating their institution without proper registration, even though some of them do know about the existence of Education Act, but then they manage to just bluntly go against the law and then operating without any proper license or proper registration with the Ministry of Education. So based on our current finding, our finding by our officer from the State Education Department or the District Education Department, we believe that there are various factors that contributing to this matter. Why they didn't actually register their centers or their institution. So among the factors are involvement of other agency in getting the registration. Okay, so if we can go to the next slides, please. Okay, sorry. So actually the process of getting the registration, there are four process. They need to do the application of establishment and then get the establishment approval and then go for the application for registration. And then once you get the registration certificates, they can actually start their business. However, in order to get this process done, they also need to actually comply to the other agencies. So we at the Ministry of Education believe that one of the main factors contributing to uncompliance to the regulation is because they need to actually comply to the regulations set by other agencies such as local authority, fire and rescue department, and also health department. We at the Ministry of Education are overlook the whole education institution to be registered under our act, but then somehow the operational of education institution must also comply with the other three agencies. So we believe that this kind of ruling coming from the other agency that actually contribute to the reason why some of the operators believe that they have difficulties in register their registration their institution. So luckily that last year we managed to actually get a project undergo a project with MPC with a collaboration team from academician from UC Malaya under Prof. Dr. Nazri to really identify what is actually the key or the main important things that the applicant or the operators facing in order for them to register. So because we believe that if we wanted to change the regulation or the policy in terms of registration, in registering these education institution, we need to identify what are the hurdles that they have been facing previously, so that we can actually find the right intervention or find the right ways of getting things done to ease the process for them to setting up the business. That's one thing, and also for them to clearly understood what they need to comply before they can register. So based on a few sessions that we have with the team, with under Prof. Dr. Nazri, and also we have managed to have a roundtable discussion with the operators, with the three agencies that involved in the process of getting any educational additional institution registered. We managed to identify that some of the process can be modified or can be simplified. Sometimes we can see that there is redundancy between the process that been done by the Ministry of Education and also the other agency. Some of them are very clearly shown that the matters are very important for them to comply with before they can actually start operating the centers. So as of now, from the previous discussion that we have, we can see that in order to simplify or to resolve the problem, we need to actually have a session, more session with the operators. So then just before they start doing their business, they know what they have to comply, they know what they have to do. So we believe that this gesture from the Ministry of Education to start off can actually change the understanding and also the behavioral between for the newly operator or for the existing operator, so that they know before they can start operating any education institution, they need to be understood the whole procedure as a whole, and then also understand why there are importance in order for them to be regulated and need to be complied with. I think that should sum up for my presentation. Mr. Faisal?
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Sufyan, for describing what was happening there and what the problem was in terms of design for you. Maybe I can go to Professor Nazdi for your presentation on this as well.
Oh, sorry, I forgot. Okay, thank you, Mr. Faizanaro. Okay, today I will share our projects names increase the registrations of private education institution with Malaysian Ministry of Education. It's an involved party, Ministry of Education and MPC, and ours as a consultant for this project. As we all know, most of the private educational institutions are defined as an institution that are not owned, affiliated, nor directly handled by Ministry of Education. Institution may be in the form of preschool, primary school, secondary school, and are owned by NGO, religious body, social entrepreneur, or individuals. Private educational institution, PEI has autonomy on their operational and their own unique method, vision, and mission to extract students for enrollment. Okay, problem of statement, when we analyze it, quality and standards, PEI needs to achieve a set of standards to meet the experience smaller. Okay, the experience. Okay, PI needs to achieve the standard to meet the expectation of stakeholder. Then they have a high demand because of the public perception. PI emulation needs to provide excellent service and guarantee to students since it involves the cost of paying tuition fee and facilities. Other than that, the challenge and issue, most of the PEI operator, administrator are likely don't have their own reason why or negative statement why they do not register with their school with KPM. Other than that, because of the what we call it comparative and between PEI as well as it will increasing their operating costs. Purpose of study is to increase the registration of private educational institutions in Klang Valley with the Malaysian Ministry of Education. We do a review. This is prime framework. We do a review, literature review. We review a journal, referred article, private educational institutions guideline, and other document related. Other than that, we do a questionnaire. We come up with a questionnaire, then we distribute to entrepreneur of PEI and in the Klang Valley. We also conduct interview with the entrepreneur of PEI, local authorities, fire department, and health department. Besides that, we also do a focus group discussion. For the focus group discussion, we also highlight a few issues regarding this registration of the PEI. Okay, this is a framework for the PRI. We come out with the objective and research question. For the purpose, like we say, we just want to see whether is it, what is the issue inside the public, hold on, because I can't read. Okay, to identify the issue faced by PEI in relationship to the establish and the registration of the institution, then we collect data through qualitative and quantitative data. Review, we want to evaluate the PEI registration process and procedure. We come out with research question, what are the process and procedure that PEI has go through for registration with MOE. We do a desktop study, text analysis, and focus group discussion. Intervention, we come out with to develop and propose intervention for promoting PEI towards getting their institution to be registered with MOE. In that stage, we come out with the desktop study, text analysis, and we come up with the intervention program. For the measure and expense, we come out with a qualitative method and quantitative method. Finding, okay, we go to the, hold on. Okay, based on the review we got, based on our survey and qualitative interview, we can find out that kindergarten and private school operator at 97% say that they are unsatisfied experience regarding PEI registration with MOE. Other than that, they have PI also, we have 87% of operators do not understand the process and procedure to register PEI with MOE. This regarding the knowledge and understanding of PEI registration procedure. For the financial constraint, we got information that 90% of the operator face high cost to obtain approval, especially cost for urban planning and planning drawing. Besides that, we also got information that 90% of entrepreneurs are not clear about the latest PEI establishment guideline and are unable to put them into practice due to bureaucracy. Based on that, after we do a qualitative survey focus group discussion, we think that we found out that we have 4 management factor. First, regarding the sorry, I can't see, it's too small. Okay, first regarding the people and environment management. Second, procedure and time management. Third, service structure and management. And fourth, policy and bureaucracy management. Based on these 4 factors, we go in deep with a review and interview to get information which part should be we focus to overcome or to increase the registration of the PEI. Okay, we go for in-depth analysis. We go for the in-depth analysis to obtain through the interview and focus group discussion. We found out 2 main factors, which is policy, bureaucracy, management factor, and individual factor, which is operator, which play a role of PAI to register with MOE. This is the main cause. So we, after discussion and look on this issue, we come out the idea that's why don't we go through to look down on this matter. That's mean under this main issue, procedure and time management. So we do an in-depth analysis. Then we show that it's require more attention on procedure and time management. Is related to the flow chart, that's the process issue, how to manage it, how to the procedure, how to get approval for the registration by MOE, because it has a lot of parties to be take part when the procedure will be highlighted. Second one about the financial issue. Third one regarding the knowledge or issue, that's understanding about the procedure or the process of the registration. So we analyze we come out with the suggestion for that issue. We just focus on procedure and time management. Then we go in deep on based on the analysis that we conduct. We come out with several procedure. What we come out with several procedure and time management required for the change, reapply, improve, then certain can be maintained. So based on this, we try to understand what should be changed, what should be reapplied again, then which process or procedure can be improved, and which procedure or process can be maintained in the actual procedure that have been applied. After that, we through that intervention, we come out with the ideas how to implement it. Then we come out with the case study behavior gap. We apply ABCD model, which means that what is the attention for that? Attention means operator have limited knowledge and understanding related to the PEI registration process. That means that they don't have understanding the procedure and process how to do the registrations. Then we believe the PI registration process is too bureaucratic and complicated. Then there is an element of favoritism in granting of business permit. It's burden operator to start a business because sometimes they have a certain procedure they need to redo again because of the mistake or misleading documents. Then choice officer have the desire to register PEI before opening, but have several options to establish PEI, whether kindergarten, mind enrichment center, TASCA, private school or school under NGO. that have a different procedure, and they are more open rather than register under the kindergarten. Determination operator have a high activism to register PAI, but the absence of a clear registration procedure make them not interested to register, because sometimes they can operate without register for a year without any action taken to them. So we come out with the intervention. This is our suggestion after we discuss with a panel, with the expert and the community, especially PEI. We come out with the intervention. We have a few intervention. First, regarding the open day PEI registration awareness campaign. Second, we try to integrate it or handbook, come out with a handbook, joint manual between MOE, local authority, fire department, and health department, because before this, all the document is separated. Then why not we integrated everything in one handbook, reduce bureaucracy, especially regarding the procedure registration process. Then we come out with an idea about the one-stop center, which can coordinate the registration process under one center, rather than these applicants who go to any different department to settle the registration. Then the fifth BI established a package offer. We come out with the idea to create a saving package for all form of PEI registration. And at the end, as all know, online registration process are involved. So we come out a review of the e-registration, because now MOE has already online registration, but a certain procedure should be highlighted or should be improved. Okay, so we come out with the next, we come out with the measure. How we measure our project might be because of the time constraint. We come out with the one, what we call it, one local authorities, Subang Jaya Multiples Council. We cooperate with the Malaysian Educational Ministry and PEI entrepreneur in Subang Jaya local authorities. For this one, evaluation and dissemination process for intervention, we are carried out. By using fuzzy-defi approach to obtain agreement among expert panel on the applicability or usability of the proposed intervention, which is appropriate to increase PEI registration with the Ministry of Education. Because of the time constraint, then we only do this, but we come out with the intervention uh, procedure, or come out as the expanded to intervention. We come out with the one flow chart where the registration process can be consolidated under one management, that is MOE. The use of one single form for all agency involve MOE, local authorities, fire department, and health department. Because of this, when we analyze the document by the Minister of Education, local authorities, fire department, and health department, certain information redundant. So why don't we come out with one flowchart, everything in one, under one management? This is under MOE. So this is our flowchart for solution intervention for this program. Then to expand this procedure, we come out after intervention and evaluation is implemented. Recommendation and action plan to increase PEI registration with Ministry of Education will be presented for further action. For this process of the flowchart of procedure, we just come out with a usability test only. We cannot implement it fully because of the time constraint. Then, as a conclusion, we have four conclusions. First, regarding the gap issue, problems, and problem in registering private education institution with MOE. The main issue include policy management and bureaucracy, management of human resource and environment, procedure and time, and management of service structure. For this presentation, I just focus on procedure and time. Second, current situation and challenge in registration PEI with MOE, inefficiency of process, numerous form to fill in, and discrepancy in procedure with a different agency is involved. After that, as a conclusion, also we have intervention process and resolution procedure of private institution with MOE. We propose all participants that underwent intervention give 50 feedback on both type of intervention method and suggest that simplification of documentation process and registration process is centralized to MOE instead of all the agency involved. Then action plan and suggestion, we come out with centralized applications prepared by MOE using only one form to expedite the registration process. And last one, autonomy of PEI should be supervised by MOE to ensure the rules and regulations are coordinated between MOE, local authorities, fire department, and health department. Thank you. That's all for my presentation. Thank you, Mr. Faisal.
Thank you very much, Professor Nazli, and also thank you very much, Mr. Sufyan, as well, for helping to describe, I think, here what was a problem in Malaysia in relation to registrations of private education providers, and how you try to tackle that, looking at the behaviour and coming up with a potential solution. I wanted to just say to the audience that's listening that if you have questions in relation to this, then please put it into the chat box, and we can certainly ask those questions either to myself or also to the presenters as well. But I think one of the things I think that was interesting here, and if I relate it back to what was being said in the keynote speech earlier on in the discussion with Dr. Pele Hansen and myself, was that what you've done here is that you've taken an approach, you've taken a problem, a policy problem in the real world in Malaysia, and then you've applied the ABCD framework, and you've applied a kind of a behavioral lens to try and identify why it is that these private education providers are not behaving in the way that you want to. And the way that you want to is you want them to register. And it's interesting. I think, firstly, I think what I'd like to understand a bit more is why you wanted to have that paradigm shift, if you like, that was being described. Why did you want to tackle this in a different way? What made you think that we need to have a behavioral approach to try to address this? I mean, did you try and address it with other kinds of interventions earlier and they weren't working? I mean, what was the reason for you turning to behavioral insights?
Okay. For the Ministry of Education, I think what we look into is actually we try a few approaches like using legal action for these unregistered institutions, for example. We do have like fine them and everything, but then somehow it doesn't really actually giving out resolve the whole problem as a whole. They're looking at just for that particular individual that been compounded, for example, or being fined. Yes, they will be registered, but then the rest of the operators are still operating like they are not breach any laws. So that's why we think that maybe something actually holding them to be compliant to our laws, because they are operating, they are actually serving the community or serving the student, but then somehow they're kind of reluctant to register. So we try using the law, one thing, but then we don't see that it's actually really effective. They just affected to those centers, but then the rest of the industry is actually looking at that as one way of what the ministry, the MOE action towards them. So that's why we think maybe we need to see why they actually reluctant to come and register themselves. So is it because of the process? I believe when Prof actually showed the outcome of their finding, you can see that some of them actually didn't have the knowledge. Some of them actually didn't know the process, actually mixed up the process and everything. So these are the things that we at the Ministry of Education have to know and understand. Then we can actually like maybe revisit the whole policy on registration there. Prof, you want to add some more?
Okay, when we talk during the interview and focus group discussion, what Mr. Sufyan say is true, because they have intents to register their TASCA or preschool or kindergarten. They need to register everything, but at the same time they think why they want to do it because of the procedure too long. Sometimes it's too complicated. Then sometimes when they apply, then they don't get any feedback for a year, for a month. So they don't know why they don't need to do that, because the main problem when we analyze it is understanding the procedure and how to register it. This is the main issue. Then the second one is procedure and time, because it's sometimes it takes too long to register a car operator want to register their PEI. Sometimes it takes too long because it is involved different parties, so it's different procedure. So that's why sometimes they take easy. Oh, never mind, I do not need to register, then I can operate as well as anything else, or I just can compound for for certain amount. So then after that they can still continue to operate their center.
Exactly.
So, I mean, what you've just described there is something that happens quite often inside governments, and not just in Malaysia but across the world as well, in relation to the approach towards regulating and towards public policy, which is that there's often there's an assumption that people aren't doing it because they're deviant, because they are, and what we have is we have the law in place, and the law is in place whereby we can enforce it and we can fine them, and when we do that, then people will do what they're told to do. But I think what has been happening, and this again is one of the reasons why Behavioural Insights became quite prominent across the world as well, is that governments realized that it's very resource intensive to go down that route. That very strict regulatory route of legal proceedings, courts, fines, inspectors, etc. costs. And it costs a lot of money to administer. And in that cost of administering it, you may or may not get the right behavior. You might catch one or two individuals, but you won't change the system. You won't change all of the providers. So that was one of the reasons why, particularly after the 2008 financial crash, that in Western countries, that there was lots of look for how to do things better and how to do things in a much more cheaper way. And what you're describing here as well is again one of the things that many countries found, whether it's in relation to paying their taxes on time, or whether it's in relation to people complying with other rules and regulations that they have to do in business, or whether it's in relation to people saving for their pensions or things like that. It's not that they don't have the intention, but it's just that they're not enabled. And how do you create that enabling environment? And I know that there's often enabling environment is described in terms of business environment quite often. But it's not necessarily described in relation to people and how they behave. And this is what I think that you've been describing here, is that what you found was that it wasn't that people didn't want to register for PEI, but it's just that people didn't know how to. And even when they did know how to, the procedure was so long that they almost took a guess and said that what they should do is that they should they'll carry on as they are, and they'll pay the fine. They don't mind paying the fine.
They don't mind paying the fine. Yes.
Yeah, they don't mind paying the fine because of, if the fine is not going to come in until a year's time,
Yes.
We'll pay the fine, but in that year we would have made money from having our business running, right? So, and then when we start to look at this from the business perspective, from the people perspective, from the human perspective, we start to realize that actually the way that they're behaving is quite normal. It's not a deviant. It's not somebody who is irrational, but it's actually quite normal behavior for somebody who's in that particular situation. So it's quite it's a good example of that paradigm shift from the traditional way of trying to have a law in place and then enforcing it and regulating it, to changing towards enabling people to do the kind of behavior without regulation, without those kind of interventions themselves. I don't know if you had any other comments. That we are getting questions coming through now that I was going to ask you as well. But do you have any comments about that paradigm shift and about the different way of thinking and maybe the lessons learned for you?
I think from the government side, yeah, maybe stricter rules or laws might actually hinder people from actually registered. That's one thing. So we actually, as a private education institution, yeah, we try to change based on the dynamic change in the industry itself, right? To make sure they don't feel like they've been regulated, but then they are regulated somehow, but then not like fully being enforced to do things that they are not compliant. Because at the end of the day, the private education institution is a business. Even though it's actually education, but then it's actually a business that can contribute to the economy. So somehow the MOE might have to actually look at how ways to support them instead of just regulating them or enforce the laws towards them. But then somehow they for me personally, I believe they still need to be regulated, but then maybe the way the regulation being spelled out should be more to their needs based compared to the one that the government wanted.
Yes. Same goes to what Mrs. Sufyan said just now, especially when we talk about the psychology, human psychology, when we do enforcement, but if the reward more than enforcement, then maybe the company said business is more profitable. So they go for profit, so they ignore about the enforcement. That's why we know this is for education business, but it will go for business. It's not more for the regulations or fine, whatever. So they just enforce for the, I have a profit for this, then I will do that. So they sometimes they ignore about the regulation, why they need, because we need to highlight or educate them why they need to register, rather than we do enforcement, we do compound everything. The most important thing based on our finding here is, why don't we do more on awareness, educate the PEI, then take them how to register it. This is for me, this is the one finding that's, I think it's important to change the behavior of the humans, especially the PEI.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much. So maybe I can pose some of the questions coming from the audience that are listening in here, and please keep the questions coming in. There's quite a few coming in now. For the first question is, are the policies, when you come up with them, and the solutions that you look into, are they benchmarked with neighboring countries about how they tackle these issues as well? Is that one of the things that you do? Do you look at comparisons with other countries, particularly those that are quite close by?
During we do a document analysis overall, what we do, we just compare with other authorities in Malaysia. We do, let's say we have a few authorities in the same country, that's Wilayah Persekutuan, Kuala Lumpur and Selangor. So we do a comparisons between the local authorities, procedures, everything. So we do a comparisons, we do analysis. Then beside on that, we see which one is suitable, which one is implement with this local authority, with this, why don't. So we just discuss on that and come out with this solution, because a certain PBT, a certain local authorities or fire department, they have a certain different regulation based on their what we call it, based on their local authorities procedures. So that's we do just based on the local context. So far, we don't do any comparison with other country. We just do because this issue, we have a different local authorities. They have a different procedure. So we just compare, then we come up with the best solution with the which local authorities done.
Okay. Okay, and I guess further down the line, that's one of the things that potentially could be done. But I've seen that happen in different countries, where sometimes there's benchmarking done internally in different states, and then later on there's benchmarking done with other countries as well. Another question about the work that you've both been doing is: has the intervention activity started as a pilot project yet?
Yes. We
Yes.
started with
Okay.
a pilot project with one local authorities. Then after that, we come up with a new procedure, which one that be embedded or joined together, a certain procedure, especially local authorities procedure.
Okay. And when do you think, what's the timeline for the pilot project and the project as a whole?
Overall, we conduct between 2 to 3 weeks for the one local authorities, because we already have a client PEI who are in the process of registrations. Then a certain they have everything document, but they do not what we call it send for approval, everything, because of the timeline, everything. So we have a sample purposely sampling a few PEI who are in the process. Then we try with this as a pilot.
Okay. Another question for about the pilot project is: so far, has the pilot project met the benefit that was expected? I mean, do you have any early results yet from the pilot?
So far, no, because with that group that we propose with the PEI in Subang Jaya, there are a few registered, but still in the process because of it's quite difficult to change the normal procedure, because sometimes the authorities, the officers still rigid to their procedures. So that's why we are still in the process to change their behavior. Okay, this is we try it, but still in the process. A few register, but in the certain stage, they are still in what we call it undergo old procedure because of the officer don't understand how it should be. Okay, they are still back to the square one. Okay, this is should be. Okay, so we
Right.
are still try as a pilot.
Okay. Sorry, Mr. Sufyan, did you want to add in anything?
Yeah, because in terms of changing the policy, it cannot be done like overnight. So that's one thing. But then somehow we can actually like in terms of the procedure, for example. So these are the things that we look into. But then yeah, I will just like Prof. Nazri said, they do have the pilot session done, but then somehow in order to change the whole thing, the whole process, because it's involving procedure that relating to the Ministry of Education, Ministry with the local authority, with the fire department. So to one item that we still actually try to put them together, just like one of the intervention that was mentioned by Prof, saying that is it possible to have like one stop center at the end, so that everybody can come to one center, and then like the authority will actually speak to each other, so that the applicant don't have to actually go to every other different agency, but then it's only come to one point, or one entry, and then we come up with that. Yeah. So that
Right.
one still need time to actually to comply with that. Right.
Okay. Okay. Another question from the audience is, and maybe I can ask for your input, and I can add in afterwards as well. But the question is, are there any legal or regulatory considerations that need to be taken into account when designing nudges? So when you were doing this work, did you have to consider any legal or regulatory considerations when you were thinking about this, or when you were thinking about what kind of interventions need to be done?
Of course, that
Of
one
course.
legal, of course, because certain different local authorities have different legal. So for the implementation, we only touch on the document, because the document, the procedure, the process of the flow chart. We only intervenes that procedure. The legal authorities on legal local authorities, everything we do not touch, because it will take time, because all the legal issue might be not under consideration, under our consideration, but we do not touch on it during the implementation of behavioral insight. We more focusing on the procedure, process, documents. That's why I choose the first title is procedure and timeline. We just focus on that because this is the biggest issue. If you want to talk about the legals, like fire department legals, health legals, PDT or local authorities legals, so it will take time because it will have a legal issue, everything. So we only focus on the procedure on that
Yeah,
we can change it.
Yes, yeah, that's right. If I can add up, so it's actually more looking at the what are the redundancy between the agencies. For example, if the Ministry of Education already asking for that particular document, so the other agency by right shouldn't actually apply the same thing. But then it's still based on the requirements set by each of the local authority or the other agencies. Yeah.
And I think this goes back to, again, one of the points that was being made in the keynote as well, which is that when you're dealing with applying this in public policy and inside government, is that, of course, the ideal scenario is that you scrap everything and you start with a blank piece of paper. But that's not reality. And in reality, you're trying to fix and change and mend the boat whilst you're on the ocean and whilst you're sailing. So I guess what you had to do is you had to have a look at where it was that you could actually make a difference, what was within the realms of changing quickly, I guess, in order to have the maximum impact for the end user. And I think that is an approach that is often done when trying to design interventions. I know we only have 5 minutes left, but there were some broader questions which were quite good, and I'll pose them to you, and then I might add in afterwards as well. The first question is around, and maybe you can speak from your experience if you have of other things, which is that is there an overlap from areas like design thinking, economic incentives, business optimization with BI in policy? So from your experience of what you've done so far, I mean, it also depends on how much you know about design thinking and all of these other things. But for you, do you think that there is overlap between those things and BI, or do you think that it's something different?
Okay, back to okay, okay. Based on my experience doing this, because this is my first, what you call it, as academician, try behavioral insight. Okay, this is my first, this method, but I think this is a very good. It's more or less the same with the all what we call it design approach. We have in the academician, we have in academic world, we have design and developmental research, whereby we can come up with a module, procedure, everything. But this is for me, this is a very good method that can be implemented. Then based on my experience, I try my best, but in certain cases it's very tough to implement it, especially regarding the implementation process. We can come up with a few interventions, but when we want to implement it, it will very tough because it will involve a lot of parties. Sometimes it will touch a procedure, policy, everything. So this is what I learned from this research, that a certain cases we can settle it within one piece of paper, what a certain needs further action by the authorities. That's all.
Yeah, totally agree with Prof. Mr. Faisal. Yeah, I think it's quite similar with design thinking. It's actually like to resolve the problem, but then somehow maybe we look at the angle of human behavior. That was something that is actually normally when we're talking about the design thinking is more on the academic parts of it, looking at that. But then this time we're more on how the human behavior can be changed or can change the ways on how we design our policy.
Yeah, no, I think you're both quite right. I think also, that the reason why it became known as behavioral insights, because previously it was behavioral. The terms being used was behavioral economics and behavioral science, but behavioral insights was a broader term used because it can apply and use other kinds of interventions. And this again was one of the things that the keynote was saying, is that it doesn't replace economic incentives, so it doesn't replace business optimization. But what it does is that it helps in, firstly, and this is what this session is about, in understanding the design of that in the first instance, understanding the reasons of why people are doing things, the diagnostics. And then afterwards, the intervention, it may be a nudge, it may not. But even if it isn't, it can still be designed with those insights in mind to say that, well, these are the kind of things that will potentially work based upon the evidence that we've found from the research and the diagnostics that's been done, as opposed to simply thinking that, for instance, if we go back to this example, the economic incentive of not being fined is going to be the main reason that people were going to comply. And that is clearly shown time and time again that that's not the case, that business don't necessarily comply because of that. Sometimes they factor in the fine into their business model. And that's just the way that they then operate. So I think that there's lots of insights here from this particular session. I was just wanting to give you both, I think, maybe one final word, I think, which is, what was the biggest lesson that you had from this exercise in designing and evaluating public policy? So if I can just ask each of you to just say, what was your biggest lesson from this exercise so far? So maybe if I can ask Professor Nazri first, and then I'll go to you, Mr. Sufyan.
Okay, for me, I think based on my experience when we're dealing with humans, it's a very tough, especially to change their behavior. Okay, a certain when we talk about the procedure, everything, then when we want ask that I want to ask them to follow this procedure or change into the others, is very tough. In right up intervention, it's very easy to say, okay, we do this. When I want to implement it, the biggest issue is to change their behavior, especially to change their mind to follow the new procedure or whatever. This still is tough for me. This is my biggest challenge when I dealing with behavioral insight, because dealing with human is very difficult, especially to change them. This is my conclusions.
Okay, Mr. Sufyan.
Okay. First of all, I would like to take the opportunity to thank MPC for allowing the Ministry of Education to join to undergo the project, the BI project, with Prof. Nazri. It's actually an open an eye-opener actually for the for us in the private education division, because normally when we do like questionnaire or something, they might say that because it was done by us from the policy people itself. So when it was done by the third party, like for example from Prof Nazri and team, so they were actually like very open up to change, to say what they think that have to be changed in the government policy. Sometimes, because normally for the Ministry of Education, we govern more on the government institution. So government institution are very government regime altogether. They have to follow whatever we decide. But then we talk about the private entity. They are actually need some flexibility, need some something that they think the government should understand them, but then somehow they will also follow whatever the government wanted them to do. So when we do it, the research or by ourselves, for example, we don't actually get this the true response from them. But then when the third party come in, for example, when Prof Nazri talked to them, and then Prof Nazri told me that what they responded is actually like, okay, so far they are actually not telling the truth when they have to confront with us, but then when they actually confronted with the third party, they are very truthfully saying that these are the things that they wanted to be changed. For example, they wanted something to be shifted from the previous or from the current procedure that we've done to a better way that they believe that can actually help them to resolve or to make sure that they are comply with whatever law, whatever rules that we are setting them upon. So it's a good experience for us. We are welcome to have more things to do with MPC, I think, so that we know.
Yes.
We are actually also learning about this, Mr. Faisal, for your information. This is also the first BI project for MOE, right? So it's a good thing that we know how things will be conducted, and then how people can react, and how can MOE or the government, actually the policymaker, can actually make some, even though it's not a big change, but then some changes that may actually impacted to them as operators.
Well, thank you both for that. And I mean, firstly, I'd also like to thank MPC for their efforts in this, not only in this session and this conference, but also more broadly in trying to apply what is now become quite a popular tool in public policy making. I mean, there's now over 400 entities across the world that are applying this, and it's good that Malaysia is now also doing this as well. And of course, well done to the Ministry of Education for volunteering and putting yourselves forward to apply this innovative tool and be at the forefront of this, I think, hopefully, wave and innovation of public policy in Malaysia. And Professor Nazri for volunteering your expertise to come and also to learn something new about a new way of doing policy and of applying it as well. And I think that the message for the audience, I guess, then is that well, firstly, look, Malaysia is on its way, and it is doing these innovative things. Yes, it's at the beginning, and yes, it will take time to do, I think, some of the type of things that are being mentioned in the keynote, and getting more robust and more sophisticated in the way that this is done, certainly. But we have to start with small steps first. And I think the other important thing to say here and to reiterate is that it is about that paradigm shift, and it is about that new way of regulating, and it is that new way of thinking about public policy around how can you really affect and change behavior, which is not the traditional kind of control and command way of changing behavior, but realizing that firstly, control and command doesn't necessarily work. And if it does, it's very expensive to do. So there has to be better ways to spend public resource and to be able to achieve the right kind of outcomes that are needed. So on behalf of the panel, I'd like to thank the audience for their participation and their excellent questions. And very much look forward to more work coming from Malaysia, demonstrating and showcasing the work that's been done in relation to behavioural insights. So thank you very much, everybody, and thank you for joining this session.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We have come to the end of our behavioral conference, and it has been a fruitful day filled with insightful discussions and also thought-provoking presentations. But before we wrap up, I would like to take a moment to express our gratitude to our esteemed panelists for their valuable contributions. Thank you to Mr. Faisal Naru, Mr. Muhammad Sufian Mahmud, and also Professor Dr. Muhammad Nazri Abdul Rahman for all your thought-provoking insights into designing and also in evaluating the policies. Your extensive experience, research, and insight in using behavioral insights to inform policy design has truly enriched our understanding of this fascinating field. I would also like to thank all our participants today. Your comments has deepened our understanding of this topic. And in conclusion, I would also like to express my gratitude to MPC for organizing this conference today. I'm sure that this conference has inspired many of us so that we'll be able to continue our work in using behavioral insights to design effective programs and policies for the betterment of the society. Thank you all for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one. Assalamualaikum and salam hibah.